FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's the last day of January 2019. Things are really going fast. Change happens incredibly quickly. Sometimes it's happened before you even realize that it's happened. And therefore, the need to optimize your role in society and in your own life is greater than ever. Hey, as always, we invite you to be a part of the show. Email me, kl@kerrylutz.com. In any event, so there's a book out called Optimizing America, and it deals with that topic, particularly the corruption and the undermining of the individual by the global financial system, mainly central banks, which in most instances are owned by commercial banks in the country in which they operate. And someone who's got a great insight into this wrote the book Optimizing America. Jarl Jensen is with us now. Jarl, we'll welcome you to the show. And hey, getting a fix on what ails society is extremely difficult. How did you kind of boil it down to central banking?
Well, you know, I'm an engineer and an inventor, a trade. I've always been about ideas and being somebody who's interested in ideas, in engineering and invention. You're constantly looking for opportunities to make things better. And when you start looking at, what happened during the Great Recession in 2007, 8, 9, and experiencing that, living through it, as an engineer, you'd say there's just something wrong. This is not, this is not the way things are supposed to be if they were fair. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows that the banks got bailed out and people got, suffered greatly because they got kicked out of their homes. Homelessness was created and there was absolutely no help for them. And you saw the big bankers foreclosing on people's houses. The unfairness of what happened in the Great Recession is remarkable. And yes, that is at a level of corruption. I agree with that. I would also, it's great to hear somebody else talk about it, that most people just don't know that commercial banks own the Federal Reserve. And then beyond that, central banks around the world are owned by the commercial banks. And the conflict of interest to humanity and the individual lives that people live are obviously, just they have to be dissolved. We've got to get rid of these conflicts of interest. And there's no greater place to show in broad daylight the conflict of interest than that the bailing out of the commercial banks during the Great Recession. That really exposed the world economy for what it is, which is dysfunctional, and it is hurting us greatly. And what I would say, my story in Optimizing America, and it's called, the e-version is called Epiphany. I changed the name and the subtitle and the cover for marketing reasons. But the story is about a presidential campaign, an unwanted presidential campaign. A book author has gone on a book tour, and he has some simple economic ideas that he tells in his story. In his book, which is economic. But when he goes on this book tour, people catch on to these simple messages about the economy, and his book tour turns into a presidential campaign. And basically, the book goes through, the exciting parts of a presidential campaign, and the people get excited, and the reader gets exposed to all the different groups of people who are hurt daily. Their lives are compromised constantly from this architecture that we have created, this trickle-down economic system, which works for hardly anybody. Even the bankers, right? At the end of the day, they're still regular people, and they take mortgages out on their houses. There is really nobody winning. And so when we say corruption, it is corrupt in the sense that you're bailing out the wrong parts of society when you're bailing out bankers instead of obviously the people. That is corrupt, but that is how the system works. So it's not like we have this, cabal somewhere sitting there making the world's decisions. No, we are just being plain old stupid as a species. We are just screwing ourselves with this economic system.
So here's the thing, Jarl. Here's the thing, Jarl. So obviously I figured out a while ago that Jamie Dimon really doesn't care about me, CEO of
really?
JP Morgan Chase. I kind of got that impression. All he cares about is his bank and amassing personal wealth, which is fine. It's what it's supposed to be. But if we don't have banks, which the old purpose of a bank was to allocate capital, where individuals would save money in the form of savings accounts or CDs, whatever, and then businesses would approach banks and say, I want to build a factory here or a pipeline there. And the bank would partner with the business and effectively finance their expansion. And that system worked great. But that doesn't seem to be the point of banks anymore. So if we don't have banks, what are we supposed to do?
Well, a great point, but let's explore the first bank that was ever created. It was basically a money shark, right? But it was worse than that. If you think about the first bank, right, just as a mental exercise, right? So you have this bank, let's say it was in the Wild West, and the bank had, and it's a small town with, let's say, 1,000 people or, a couple hundred people, and all the people put their money into this bank. And so let's say there was $10,000 in the bank, and the bank having basically, the first bank was basically just a vault where people put their money to keep it safe, right? But instead of keeping the money safe, what the bank did was said, hey, I'm going to use this money, the town people's money, and lend it back to the townspeople one at a time and get a contract that says, if you don't pay me back, blah, 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 I'm going to come break your legs or, foreclose on your house.
Throw you in prison.
Yeah, well, exactly. But the point is that we've forgotten in society that borrowing money is bad. It is basically indenturing your life. It's, you're basically selling your freedom by taking out a loan. And the banking system has one at a time, right? Hey, I'm going to lend money to you, and you sign this contract, and then what happens? It's like magic in this small, close-knit community where the bank loans out the money to somebody, right? They go spend it where they want to, and guess what? The money magically comes back into the bank. So then the bank goes and targets the next person in the town and says, here, borrow some money, and then the money comes magically back into the bank. And one at a time, the whole town all of a sudden, after a while, is contractually obligated to the bank, right? But then it gets worse than that when you look at it from a macroeconomics perspective, because what happens when somebody borrows money, they spend more money, right? And when you spend more money, it causes the increase in the price of, the commodities, so that it becomes necessary for people to make ends meet to borrow money. And so it's like an addiction, right? Like a drug user takes a shot of heroin and goes, boy, that feels great. And then, if he's smart, he never does it again, right? But then he does it a couple more times, and all of a sudden he needs to get that shot of heroin. And that works the same way in society, because in order to make ends meet, if everybody else in society is borrowing money, right, then you, making the same money as everybody else, you also need to borrow money to make ends meet. And this is how the whole banking system has entrapped humanity globally. into this indentured, global indebtedness. Global debt is now at $240 trillion.
Yeah.
The total American debt is around $75 trillion and growing rapidly. We have indebted ourselves to this banking system, which was at the very foundation when it started was a loan shark. It was a drug dealer, right, who was indenturing everybody one by one, taking them down. And so now the banking system has gotten everybody on the hook, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no way out. We're all hooked on debt. The American government is, the businesses are, and the individual American and the global citizen. Everybody's on the hook to this banking system, and it's killing us.
Yeah.
And the way to change it isn't to do what you just suggested, which is to kill the banks. Now, what you have to do is make borrowing money very unattractive. You've got to raise interest rates. You've got to raise interest rates way high, right? So that borrowing money is not attractive.
Well, but
the second thing you have...
One thing. So if I go back to rich dad, poor dad, there's good debt and there's bad debt. All right. Good debt being borrowing that is done to purchase an asset to help produce more or that will earn a return. Bad debt being consumer goods purchases using debt, even mortgage on a house, right?
Yeah.
You agree with that premise?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Egypt is on the verge, once again, becoming a world-renowned gold producer. The Golden Age is being rediscovered. For millennia, ancient Egyptian kingdoms prospered from unparalleled riches. Pharaohs built their empires and flaunted their abundant wealth that was made possible by the country's resource-rich gold deposits. Despite this rich history, modern Egypt remains one of the most underdeveloped gold mining countries in the world. Aton Resources is at the center of the modern Egyptian mining world, diligently working both as the only public exploration company in Egypt today and as the advocate for mining reform with the Egyptian government. However, those that arrive early like Aton will reap the best rewards. Aton's discovery of the legendary Lost Mountain of Gold at Radruin and its current aggressive drilling program there could potentially reap those rewards. Aton Resources is focused on its 100% owned Abu Marawat concession in the Arabian-Nubian Shield, located 200 kilometers north of Centamin Sakari's world-class gold mine. Aton possesses first-mover advantage in the underfollowed jurisdiction of Egypt, which is currently undergoing mining reform. To stay on top of Aton's latest drill results and news, go to atonresources.com. Aton trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker AAN and on the OTC under the ticker ANLBF.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, I think as an individual, obviously you can borrow money, buy a house, and rent that house out for more than your mortgage costs are. Mm-hmm. That seems like a smart thing to do, right? And obviously you can have bad debt where you spend all your money on a Mercedes and on a brand new Mercedes for $150,000 as opposed to a Volvo for $35,000. I mean, there's $115,000 spent on vanity, and you still have to pay it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, obviously that is a liability you don't want or don't need. If you have enough money, well, do what you want with your money. But from a societal perspective, debt has a different outcome, which is the more debt a society has, the higher the cost of living. And now look at Japan, right, which is where America is headed. Japan, around the Tokyo area, mortgages are 100 years long. You've got 3 generations signing on to a mortgage to buy a house in Japan. In America, we used to have 10-year mortgages, 15-year mortgages. We're now at 30. We're headed to 45 and 50 and 100. This is not the direction we want to go because you're tying up multiple generations to these mortgages. Now, the American dream says that you're supposed to buy a house using a mortgage because there's hardly any other option nowadays, and then that house is supposed to appreciate in value, and then you're supposed to sell it, and magic, American dream come true. But that dream is a little bit tainted, right? And it's tainted by the banking industry and the fact that you are now required, basically, unless you are incredibly lucky and make an incredible amount of money and you can pay cash, or maybe you got lucky and sold your business, but you are basically taking an asset and riding a wave of asset prices going up, so that when you sell later, 20, 30 years later, when it's time to retire, the problem is that, okay, you're getting a bunch of cash, but you still got to find some place to live. And so the only way to turn that cash into sort of like a savings for your retirement is by downgrading, right? To move out of the big city and move into, New Mexico, where the properties are much cheaper, or moving into South America, where the cost of living is a lot cheaper, which is some people are doing that. But what you haven't really generated wealth. What you have done is just downgraded your life from an expensive, higher end life to a lower cost life. And that's not really wealth generation. It's just lowering your cost of living by moving to a place that's less desirable. So is that really the American dream? I hope not. It sounds to me like the American dream's for the banker, because for 30 years you're making principal and interest payments to the bank. It is a little bit more complicated than people think, and people have to start looking a little bit beyond what's happening in their individual life, like Poor Dad, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because what's really affecting their lives is the broad economy. The broad economy is forcing their paychecks to be small, and it is forcing the cost of living to go up, and it's all because of debt, and automation is also having an incredibly negative impact. And we need to look at the economy from an engineer's and innovator's perspective on how would you think about why do we accept that industries get wiped out, people get laid off because of automation and technology. Why do we accept that? But then at the same time, we also accept that our banking system hasn't changed in 100 years, that we are fundamentally following this principle that J.P. Morgan, of all people, because you just talked about Jamie Dimon, the original founder of America's biggest bank, J.P. Morgan, and now Chase, he said that money is gold, everything else is credit.
Correct.
And so when Richard Nixon in 1972 refused to sell gold for money, guess what? Now gold is not money. All you have left is credit. All money is credit. And so you have this economic system where the only way money comes in to the economy is through borrowing, through the use of credit. And it's that dogma, right, that we have accepted and we have not questioned. And we aren't. Are we really allowed to vote on it? No, because guess who runs the money flows, the banking system? The Federal Reserve, as you started the show off with, is owned by commercial banks. So we don't get a vote. We don't get a say. And it's killing not only us, and I if you want, you can ask me to correlate pollution with the banking system. I blame them for the CO2 problems we have, for not resolving them. If we had control of money flows, right, of interest rates for the purpose of humanity, we could not only lower the cost of living, we could whip this global warming problem in years, not decades. We could solve it quickly. We can solve all of humanity's worst problems. We could solve war, believe it or not, with the proper global banking system. Right. We have to, ask me, challenge me, and I'll explain how we can solve some of the world's biggest problems by changing the banking system.
All right. Well, we kind of don't have enough time to solve all the world's biggest problems. I'll take a little issue with you on climate change, global warming. I'm not convinced of it, and there's too much fraud that has taken place in this research by the IPCC and NASA and ClimateGate and everything else to really put any heed in those statistics, but we'll agree to disagree on that one. I think that the problem that we've got is that we always want a free lunch. And Jefferson said it, I believe, when they were drafting the Constitution. Problem is that one half of the world wants to live at the expense of the other half. So what we're dealing with are human problems that are reflected in the banking system, not the banking or the economic system, not the banking system, causing the problems, although it's, I admit, hard to tell. My father always used to say, if you split up all the money in the world and gave everybody an equal share of it, within 15 minutes, there would be rich people and poor people. So certainly reforming our systems is a vital part of solving all our problems. But, you can't, if everything is corrupt and everyone is corrupt, it's really hard to set about just ending the corruption by changing a system. You just wind up with a new form of corruption.
Well, I don't agree with that. The reason is that it's not human corruption or human nature to be greedy. Greed is a function of need. Businesses need more profit, and so it appears that they're being greedy. Bankers need to make loans. And so they appear to be greedy when they start foreclosing on houses. The 2009 bailout of the bankers looked greedy, but in truth, the world needed the banks to be bailed out. It is the system that creates need. Even on the billionaire level, these billionaires have needs. And so I don't believe there are individuals that are corrupt, that their human nature has been corrupted. I believe the system forces us to be greedy. It forces us to have needs. And that is what is making everybody say that the problem is human nature. No, the problem is that humans are all working inside this economic system that forces needs upon us, needs to succeed, needs to survive. I don't blame anybody for, like you said, for Jamie Dimon becoming a billionaire. I've seen him talk in person. I know he's a nice guy. He's not corrupt. I think he's morally doing the best he can. And all the people in Davos, I think they are morally trying to do the best they can. They are obviously conflicted with higher taxes, because who wouldn't? I mean, they're already paying 95% of all the global taxes are probably coming out of the people at Davos. So when you say let's double the taxes, they're basically going from paying 95% to paying 97% or something like that of the global taxes. So it's not like they're being greedy, really, right? They are simply defending their businesses, because they know if their businesses have to pay twice as much taxes, cash flow is going to be a big problem for them. That cash flow scares these guys. They run out of cash, and they can be bankrupt. Look at the GE, right, falling on bad times, or read the book Good to Great, and you'll notice all the names that they said are great are no longer here, right? They went good to great to gone.
Very true.
There is no safe place for bankers. There's no safe place for politicians or politics in general. There's no safe place for business people or the individual, billionaires to poor people. There is no safe place where you can say, I made it. Well, I couldn't say that a billionaire couldn't sell all his assets and get out and not buy you can obviously get out, but then guess what? Father Time still comes and knocks at your door, right? So there is no safe place, but what we do have is a system that has set up everybody to suffer. And you got to ask yourself, as humanity, is that really the goal? Is it really our goal to watch? I mean, look at what Japan's doing to itself, right? Their birth rate is so low at this point that they have now calculated calculated the date that the last Japanese person will be born, which is like in 2350, right? Not that far away from now. And America is going in the same direction. The only thing saving America from having that the last day the last American is going to be born is actually migration. We have incredibly large migration, and that's actually saving the future prospects of our economy and so on. Something I think people should consider when they want to put up a big wall is that people coming into our economy actually is the one thing that grows our economy truly. Borrowing money and spending it doesn't actually grow our economy. Our economy is not actually growing when you do the math, right? If you're borrowing 3 times as much money as the economy is growing by, well, if you subtracted the amount of money we borrowed from the amount of growth we got, I see that we're actually not growing anymore. And that's been happening for a long time now. So one thing that actually definitely will grow the economy is a larger population. And our birth rate is nowhere near. So why isn't the birth rate where it used to be? I mean, in 1850, where people were a lot poorer, a lot less educated, they were having 10 kids. Now, if you have 10 kids, you'd have to be a multi-billionaire in order to fund the education and everything else of those 10 kids. People are having close to 2 kids, and it's not enough actually to cause the population to grow. The only thing causing the American population to grow is actually immigration.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to leave it there. So just tell us where we get the book, Jarl, and how to connect with you on the web.
Yeah, I'm my website is optimizingamerica.com. My name is Jarl Jensen. It's also an author website for that. Right now, actually today, well, I'm not sure you're broadcasting this today, but it is free right now on Kindle Unlimited permanently on Amazon. And you look up Optimizing America or Epiphany. One man will level the field. And please read it. Please sign up for my emails and keep in touch. The book is part of a series, and it is. I think it's going to be very thrilling. I've gotten great reviews, and
all right,
the book series is very thrilling and exciting.
It's been great having you on. Hey, any questions or comments? KL@KerryLutz.com. Please, if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, or on the regular podcast channel, please subscribe, like, and share. Really helps me when you do that. Really helps get the show out, make it more popular. Jarl, really appreciate you coming on. We will talk to you again real soon, and great luck with the book.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.